Romans 9, verses 20 and 21. It says here in verse 20, "But indeed, O man, who are you to reply against God? Will the thing formed say to him who formed it, 'Why have you made me like this?' Does not the potter have power over the clay from the same lump to make one vessel for honor and another for dishonor? Will the thing formed say to him who formed it, 'Why have you made me like this?'" There you see a potter, there you see a clay. And if we can, like I mentioned last month, the term sovereignty is not explicitly mentioned in the scriptures. I prefer NKJV, and the only word that uses is the potentate in Timothy. I think it is the ESV that's the only version that uses the word in that same Timothy verse, in reference, they uses the word sovereignty. So sovereignty is not even explicitly mentioned in the scriptures. But going through the scriptures and seeing the experiences of certain men and women and the way they have responded and certain statements of God, we realize that God is sovereign. And he has, given glimpses of his sovereignty in the scriptures. So it is hard to understand it. It is hard to comprehend it. It is hard to define it. It's hard to put an arm around it and hug it to the point that you can enjoy it. But I made a feeble attempt to define it, just to recap. And I said I understood it this way as, going through the scriptures. It is always, God is always king. God is always on the throne. And God is always in control. Amen. And God's will is always accomplished. Amen. Always accomplished. I was sitting today morning and I was trying to picture it. I want to picture it to understand it, enjoy it. It is like God sitting on his throne, and he has all these innate faculties, his omniscience, his omnipotence, his omnipresence, his foreknowledge. And I am sitting here in front of him. And the beauty of sovereignty is that it is always tied to the will of God. The sovereignty of God and the will of God are so closely bound. And so I'm sitting here before him, and he has this will for Thomas Cherian. And he uses all these faculties. Everything he knows, his power, his knowledge, his presence, his foreknowledge, he uses them all to make sure that his will ultimately will happen in Thomas Cherian's life. Now, Thomas Cherian has his own upbringing. He has his own inclinations. He has his own weaknesses. He has his own failures. He has all his different influences. And Thomas Cherian can go in any direction. But he uses all these attributes of his and sovereignty to finally, it doesn't matter what direction Thomas Cherian goes. If he is a child of God and if he has submitted his life to the will of God, God in his sovereignty ultimately always brings to pass what he has chosen for Thomas Cherian. And that definitely is an encouragement. That was my attempt to define sovereignty. Then we started off, I wanted to look at 5 instances. 4 instances in the lives of 4 people, and one look at the cross to see how we can understand sovereignty and how we can respond to sovereignty. Now, the verse that I read, Romans chapter 9, verses 20 and 21, and the chapter that it is the context in is very, very complicated. I encourage you to go home and read it. It's very complicated. When you look at the scriptures, you can view sovereignty from the perspective of God. And we can view sovereignty from the perspective of a believer or a man. If you were to view it from the perspective of God, you would go crazy. I am not even going to make an attempt to view it from the perspective of God. One vessel for honor, one vessel for dishonor, one vessel for glory, one vessel not for glory. It's very hard. But my goal was to, I may not like it, but God is sovereign. I may not understand it, but God is sovereign. And that's not going to change. It's a part of him. It oozes out of him. It's a part of his total character. So I may not understand it. I may not agree with everything. because I don't fully understand it. But that does not deny the fact that he is sovereign, and he is sovereign for a reason. So I'm going to look at it, try to grasp it, try to enjoy it, and ask, Lord, how can you sanctify me on this road of sanctification? How can you sanctify me when I grasp hold of the sovereignty of God? So I'm not looking at it from God's perspective. It is too hard, difficult for me to comprehend. But I want us to look at it from the believer's perspective and see how this can sanctify us, how it can truly, truly change how you look at life and how you handle life, and how everything the world, the flesh, and the devil throws at you, how you can handle it. We looked at, as a first person to look at, we looked at the life of Abraham. I want to just summarize that, and our goal is to look at the life of Job and the life of Joseph, and we'll close it at 3:30. We did a quick timeline on Abraham. We went from Genesis 12 through 22. And we saw that after waiting 25 years for the son of promise, God finally gave it to him at age 100, when it was impossible to have children. Isaac comes at God's time, at God appointed time, and when it was time to get Isaac, God gave them Isaac. But it didn't make any sense for Abraham. You got the son of promise, and now through him you're going to have descendants as stars, the stars in the sky and the sand in the sea. And the same God who made you wait 25 years finally tells you, give the son of promise back to me. And we were talking last month, it doesn't make any sense. You make me wait 25 years, you give me a son of promise, you talk about all these things about the sand in the shore and the stars in the sky, and you give it to him, and now I can see your prophecy being fulfilled, your plan for my life being fulfilled. Everything out of me, the Jews are going to come out, and everything is going to be fulfilled. But what's happening here? It doesn't make any sense. Did you have a change of mind? Now you're asking me to take him, go on a 3-day journey to Mount Moriah, and sacrifice the son of promise back to you? It doesn't make any sense. But after walking 25 years with God, I think Abraham came to know who his God was. Who is God? I mean, what can the clay say to the potter? Everything I have is yours. I would never have had a son of promise if you had never willed it. You gave me a son of promise, I got it. If you ask for it, I'll give it back to you. No questions asked. 3 days, a father who waited 25 years for a son, seeing in his very eyes the prophecy being fulfilled, and now has to walk a 3-day journey, burning in his heart to sacrifice the very same son of promise back to the one who gave it to him. No questions asked. I believe, I'm a father. I walk 3 days and I agonize. The 3 days journey is pure agony. I mean, the son is grown up. I'm sure he also asked, where is the lamb, Father? And he agonizes all the way. But no questions asked. He puts him on the altar and he takes the knife. And I strongly believe, knowing Abraham and his faith in God, and where he has come to that stage of maturity after walking 25 years with him, I'm sure he would never have ever hesitated to put the knife through. Because the man has got a glimpse of what it is to submit to a sovereign God. To submit to someone. Because it doesn't matter whether I have Isaac or not Isaac. You are still on the throne. You are still in control. Your will take place. And your will is the best for me. I still believe you can give me 1,000 Isaacs after this. But this is my allegiance to you, Father. My God, I'll sacrifice my best to you. And that's how we see that Abraham was sovereign. Abraham submitted to the sovereignty of God. So I wrote a couple of thoughts at the end of that. Unquestionable trust in the midst of confusion. Unflinching obedience in the midst of heart-rending pain. Unwavering submission to God's sovereign will. The clay submitted to the potter in unbelievable circumstances, no questions asked. And so we have what we call the friend of God, the father of faith. In the next 15 minutes, I just want to quickly look at how Job and Joseph showed me glimpses of sovereignty in the scriptures. Many of you know what we have gone through as a family. If Job was not in the book, in the scriptures, I would have been a madman by now. I would have been insane. We would be divorced by now. But I thank God that the book of Job is there in the scriptures. And for some unknown reason, I had read it, and I have grasped it, and I had understood it. So it helped us to stand through those difficult times in 2008. If you can turn with me to Job 1 and 2. Let me just quickly go through the story. The opening scene, we see a very blessed man. Verses 1, I'm just going to quickly go through it. There was a man named Job, and this is the testimony that the scriptures give about him. And not only that, you will see later that the scriptures that the heavens are talking, God is talking about him in the heavens. Blameless, upright, one who feared God, shunned evil. Beautiful testimony. He's blameless, he's upright, he fears God, he shuns evil. You add that to a large, beautiful family, 7 sons, 3 daughters, lots of sheep, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 yoke, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household. The greatest man in the East. So well-to-do, lots of property, lots of possessions, lots of land, lots of servants, and lots of children. 10 children. Very godly man, very religious, very pious man. And the sons always have party in each of their homes. Every time they have a party, they call the sisters also. So the father was so pious and religious that he would fear that they would curse God in all their party, so he would do burnt offerings after every party to sanctify their children. So everything is going good. Picture of a perfect family. Some of our families, actually. Perfect families. Then let's go to movie mode, okay? Let's split our screens. Some of our phones, I don't think the Apple phone can do it, but only the Android phone can split their phones into 2 screens. Let's split our screens, okay? So we have 2 scenes here. We have one scene in the heavens, and we have one scene in Job's locality. So let's go to the heavenly scene. God is sitting on the throne, and he's having a conference with the angelic beings. And Satan also is also there. And it says here in verse 7, "Where do you come, Satan?" Satan answered, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it." And, there are a few instances, I think, in the scriptures where God shows off. And to me, this looks like God showing off. "Satan, have you set your heart and your eyes on my servant Job? There is none like him in all the earth. A blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil." The very testimony of God in the heavenlies is great about this man. And to me, it looked like in the presence of all the angelic beings, God is taking this one human and saying, I'm a little showing him off. Have you set your eyes on this godly man? This upright, blameless, one who shuns evil? And God is showing him off over there. And Satan said, "Yeah, I saw him. But he's godly. Why? He's godly because you have blessed him. He worships you because you have blessed him. Let's put him to a test. Let's take away all his possessions." And God, in his sovereign wisdom, allows Satan to do all that he wanted to Job. Kept him on a leash. He said, "Don't take his life." Kept him on a leash. And the ensuing verses, we see the great. I think there is no family should experience this tragedy at all. What happens in verses 13 through 19. It's everything, every blessing that you see in chapter 1, verses 2 through 3. Everything, all the camels, the oxen, the sheep, the donkeys, the servants, the children. Between verses 13 and 19, they all just, one by one they go. One messenger after another is coming and giving them bad news. Verse 14 says, you lost your oxen. Verse 15 says, they took away every time he loses his oxen or a camel or oxygen or his oxen or a sheep, he's losing servants along with them. And the greatest tragedy comes in the end. He says there in verse 19. And suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the four corners of the house. And it fell on the young people, and they are dead. 7 sons and 3 daughters, all gone. Let's go back to the heavenly scene. So, God gives the devil permission to test Job, or test everything that God's testimony of Job is. Upright, blameless, fears God, shuns evil. Everything is put to the test. And now the test has happened, and the loss has taken place in the life of Job. And the devil, this is beautiful imagination. And the devil is coming and telling to God, I have did everything that you have given permission to me. Watch now. He has heard all the bad news, one after the other. He is going to get up and he is going to curse you. Okay, let's read verse 20. Job arose, tore his robe. It's coming, God, it's coming. The devil is telling, it's coming, he's going to curse you. Tore his robe, shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped. But I thought he was supposed to curse God and die. I can just imagine the face of Satan. Jaw dropped. He's supposed to rise up, tear his clothes, shave his head, and denounce God. Everything that he has happened. But he does the straight opposite. And do you know why he does that? The answer is there in verse 21. Naked, there is no explicit use of the word sovereignty. There's no explicit definition. But you can see in the scriptures and the experiences and the responses of men and women what the beauty of sovereignty is. Naked I come from my mother's womb. Naked I shall return there. The Lord gave. And the Lord take. He's on the throne. He can do whatever he wants. I am the clay. He's the potter. There's no questions asked. The 7 sons, the 3 daughters, the camels, the oxen, everything is his. I cannot ask him back. Even when he allows all this, he is good and right. Amen. Always on the throne. Always king. Always in control. No oopsies, no surprises, nothing happens in God's kingdom. He's always in control. And always his will is accomplished. There you see in the response of Job what sovereignty is. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. You ask the worship team, that's worship language. Bless the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. How can a man who lost his 7 sons, 3 daughters, all his possessions, and everything that he owned other than his wife, everything else has disappeared in fraction of seconds? How does this man stand up, tear his robe, shave his head, and goes on his knees and worships the same God who has allowed all this to be taken away? What does this man understand about his God that makes him so different? That is why this is a call to worship God in the midst of unimaginable tragedy. Unimaginable tragedy. When it does not make sense. When it is absolute chaos outside, chaos inside, turmoil inside. Nothing makes sense when the land below you is giving away. The only thing left to hold on, to keep you from insanity, is that thread that hangs, and you jump and you hang on to it and you look at the other end of the thread. It is nothing but God still sitting on the throne. Nothing has happened. He has not shaken, has not slipped down, or he's like, what's going on here? Nothing is happening. That thread that you hang on, the thread of the slender thread of sovereignty that you hang on when it is all chaos outside and inside and nothing is making sense. The end of the thread is still God sitting on the throne. Amen. And in the midst of all this, His will is still happening. And when you submit to the will of God, in the midst of all this, you are being sanctified. Amen. You are being sanctified. It is even sadder. It doesn't stop there. The devil says, I want more peace. I want another piece of him. I want another piece. It's all fine. You took away everything. I'm surprised at his response. But let's afflict him with some sicknesses, and he will curse you and die. Fine. Do that. So he afflicts him with boils, and he's sitting there, and he has this sharp thing, and he's scratching all his boils, and boils all over his body. And his wife, she's the only person left, and she's nagging. His nagging wife tells him in Job chapter 2, verses 9 and 10, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. You know how he answered? His answer has sovereignty. His answer has his grasp of sovereignty all over it. It says here in verse 10, but he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In all this, he did not sin with his lips. Integrity is the result of grasping sovereignty. You know, integrity is a beautiful word. It's very hard to describe. It's not perfection. It's not sinlessness. It's that completeness. It's that well-roundedness. Not the roundedness I have, but the well-roundedness. It's the fruits of the Spirit in a balance, flowing out in a beautiful way. How does Job maintain his integrity in such chaos and confusion? Because he has grasped sovereignty. It is this unshakable faith that when nothing is making sense, my God still is in control and makes sense. Amen. Otherwise, how about you don't go insane when you lose your 7 sons and 3 daughters, and the only person left with you is your wife, and she's telling you, curse God and die. And the man has the coolness and the calmness and the integrity to respond to his wife graciously and say, do we only accept blessings from God and not adversity? Relax, honey. He is still on the throne. He's still king. Only his will take place. I have no questions. I trust him completely. It was the choice of Job to curse God and die, or submit to God's sovereign will. It is our choice in the time of testing and trials and adversity, whether Job had a choice. God promoted him, displayed him as a trophy. If Job had collapsed, God's testimony of Job is gone. But Job held on to what God said about him, because sovereignty sustained him through that. Held on to him. So the choice is left to us. Do you want to be a trophy in the hands of God, or a trophy in the shelf of man? It's a choice. I'll close with this. We won't do Joseph. Every trial you face, every adversity, every testing, you think about Job. Think about the 2 views. When I am encountering and facing this trial, is God showing me off in the heavenlies? If God is showing me off in the heavenlies, I should stand up to what He's showing me off. And so at the end of the day, Job was like a trophy in the hands of God. He was showing him off to all angelic beings. It's our choice. Do you want to crumble under adversity? Do you want to be crushed? The devil roars around like a lion. Or do you want to grasp sovereignty? Maintain your integrity like Job. Stand up to the testimony that God has for you. He might be testing you in the heavenlies. We will never know. We will never know. It's painful. It is very painful for Job. But the choice is, do you want to be a trophy in the hands of God, or do you want to be a trophy in the shelf of man? God bless you.